How's everybody doing? You doing good? Oh, man. What's up, Alex? How you doing, buddy? I thought it felt extra handsome in here today. How you doing? You doing all right? You doing all right? How's everybody else doing besides Alex? Now, you doing okay, too? Good, awesome. If you don't know me, my name's Elliot. I'm the associate minister here at the Cove. We're really glad that you're here with us today, whether you're with us in the room, whether you're streaming with us on YouTube, what's up, everybody, or whether you're listening later on the week via iTunes or Google Play on the podcast. We love you. We're excited that you've chosen to spend a few minutes with us as we wrap up our series on what it means to love like Jesus today. We're going to talk about Jesus' love as a healing love. You know, I have this friend named Dale who's a missionary in Colombia, South America, and he's been there for a long time. He's been there for 40 plus years, and God's done amazing things in this place. They planted over 40 churches, and it's just an incredible thing to go and to see. And he tells a story. He said when we first got there, he was here a few months ago, and he told a story about how he drove from Ohio in a van, which is really difficult to do, by the way, to drive to Colombia. And so he said, we got there, we didn't have anything. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any clothes. We didn't have any medical supplies. We didn't have anything to give to these people. All we had was Jesus. And turns out that was exactly what they needed to do, because that's all that they actually needed. He said, we were going door to door, and we were introducing people to Jesus, and we found ourselves in this row of houses that was built on an open sewer. You can smell it, right? It's built on an open sewer, and it's free land. So the poorest of the poorest of the poor live here. So they knock on the door, and they hear people running around inside, and they were trying to figure out what is happening in here right now. And as it turns out, these people were so poor that they only had one set of clothes. Okay, that was it. And it was laundry day. So everybody in the house, when they knocked on the door, was naked, okay? So they're running around like wringing clothes out, trying to get something on so they can answer the door and figure out what's happening. So they answer the door, and it's mom and her little kids, and they introduce them to Jesus. And over time, they become Christians. And so mom, she cleans houses for a living. She doesn't do a very good job, so she doesn't get paid hardly anything. But she says, when I became a Christian, I started reading my Bible, and I saw where it said that I'm supposed to work at everything I do as if I'm working for the Lord. And to me, that meant I needed to do a better job cleaning houses because I needed to clean them as if Jesus lived there. And so guess what happened? Pretty soon, she started doing a really good job. And her employers said to their friends, hey, we got this housekeeper. She's amazing. She does amazing work. We don't pay her anything. It's a great deal for us. And guess what happened next? Somebody stole her, right, and paid her more money. And this happened 2, 3, 4 times. And he says, now her kids drive nicer cars than I do. And they live in a really nice house in a gated community. Because why? Because we gave them food? No. Medical? No. Clothing? No. We gave them what they needed. We introduced them to the healer, and he changed their entire family tree just like that. He changed everything. And what am I saying? We should ignore physical needs? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is we need to make sure that we're connecting people to the one who can make an eternal difference in their life. And Jesus is the answer to all of these other problems. And this isn't an isolated incident, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but 40 years ago, Colombia was 0.3% Christian. And the economy in Colombia was tied with Haiti for the worst in this hemisphere. 40 years later, not just because of Dale and Columbia Christian Mission, although they've had a lot to do with introducing Jesus to Colombia. 40 years later, Colombia is 30% Christian. What impact do you think that has had on the economy of Colombia? Well, today, Colombia is in the top 50 in the world and is one of the premier retirement destinations for Americans. Why? Because Jesus changes everything. Amen? You know, in our city, Jacksonville, globally, we're known as a city that is a hub for human trafficking. Did you know that? We're known as a hub for human sex slavery. Are you okay with that, church? I'm not okay with that. And I've been thinking a lot about, like, what do we do? How do we change it? And, you know, maybe we can talk some more about this later. But so far, the thing that I've come up with is, look, the only way that this changes is if the hearts and the minds of the people who are engaged in this activity change, and there's only one way that's going to happen. I bet you can guess what it is. I'm going to introduce them to Jesus. But this only happens when the church says enough is enough and is willing to step up and to introduce people to the healer, to the one who can change it all. And if we're going to do that, listen, it's going to get messy around here. You know that, right? Because we're going to have to go out. We're going to have to bring people in. We're going to have to introduce them to Jesus and send them back out again. So we've got a decision to make. We're going to have to decide if our priority is church the way we like it or lost people. Are we going to prioritize keeping everything nice and clean and, our buddies the way we love it? Or are we going to put lost people ahead of our wants and our needs and our desires? And this isn't a new tension. It's not something that's unique to us. In fact, Jesus was dealing with this tension one Saturday in the first century. This is from Luke chapter 14. Here's what it says. One Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in the home of a leader of the Pharisees, and the people were watching him closely. There was a man there whose arms and legs were swollen. And Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law, is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not? Spoiler alert, it's not permitted, okay? When they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man, healed him, and sent him away. Then he turned to them and said, which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out? And again, they could not, or perhaps would not, answer. Now, I want to ask you a question. It's not a trick question. Does Jesus prioritize a holy day or a hurting person? Which one? It's not hard, right? Jesus is going to pick a hurting person over a holy day every single time. And it's a little bit difficult. And before we just beat the Pharisees with a club this morning, I have to tell you that I empathize with them a little bit in this situation, which I understand is a weird thing for a preacher to say, but hear me out on this. The Pharisees, they're trying to keep the law, right? Because didn't the law say, don't work on the Sabbath? You may have heard of this little thing called the 10 Commandments. It's kind of a big deal. And isn't one of the 10 Commandments, honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy? You remember when they came out of Egypt, they were slaves. God freed them. They crossed the Red Sea, and they were complaining because they didn't have any food. So God provided manna or bread from heaven. And they were told, don't pick up more than you need for one day, because if you do, it'll go bad. Except for on what day? Except for on Friday, because there ain't going to be no bread on Saturday, because it's the Sabbath and you're not allowed to do anything on the Sabbath. So here's the Pharisees going, hey, can't you wait like 24 hours? We want you to keep the law. And so I don't know about you, but the firstborn in me is like, why can't you just keep the law? I mean, the rules are here. I'm a rule kind of person. They give order and structure to my life. But, the Pharisees, they were passionate about these rules. But how many of you know you can feel strongly about something and feel wrong, and be wrong at the same time? You can feel strongly about something and be wrong at the same time. We live in a culture where we think that if we just say the same thing over and over and loudly, that we're right. But that's not actually accurate, is it? One of my pet peeves right now on Twitter is we'll write the same sentence, but we'll write it 6 times, like that makes it more true than if we just wrote it one time. The fact of the matter is, I can be passionate about something all day long. That doesn't mean I'm right. The only reason that I'm right is if I'm actually right. And so Jesus says you can feel strongly about something and be wrong at the same time, because their priorities were mixed up. They were messed up. And Jesus' priority is people. Jesus is trying to teach them that the Sabbath was given to them by God to help them. Jesus said it this way, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. I gave you the Sabbath so that you would learn to rest, so that you would learn to trust me and to know that I'm the one that provides your needs, not you. This isn't just another in the long list of regulations that you have to keep to earn my love. I want you to know I gave you the Sabbath as a blessing to you. But Jesus is going to prioritize a hurting person over a holy day every single time. And the thing is, a lot of us, we would say that we prioritize hurting people. Like if I just asked you, that would probably be your answer. But I just want to I just want to ask, is that really how we live our lives? Because we talked about last week, a person isn't what they think, a person is what they do. And we said, I'm not a generous person if I thought about giving to charity or if I thought about showing up to help you move. I'm a generous person if I actually did it, right? And I'm not a follower of Jesus if I just know some stuff about what he said. I'm a follower of Jesus if I do what he told me to do. I mean, Jesus said, don't call me Lord and not do what I say. That's not how this works. And a lot of us, we say our priority is people, but if we really looked, we'd find out that people are somewhere on the list, but they might be below our job or our bank account or our 401k or our family or our kids or some of us. I'm going to get in trouble for this. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm the associate. I can get away with it, right? Okay, some of us prioritize Bible study over helping people. Like we tell people, I'm sorry I can't help you tonight. I got Bible study. Then we go to a Bible study and we talk about what it would be like if we help people. Is that weird? That's weird, man. That's messed up. That's not how it's supposed to be. Okay? Jesus' priority is people. And let me just give it to you straight. If we aren't willing to help people meet Jesus, we cannot say we want the same thing he does. We can't, because we don't. Jesus' priority is people. And Jesus, he's preparing this big party. He's going to have a party, and he wants everybody to be invited. And he actually told a story about that just a few verses later in chapter 14. Here's what he said. He said, a man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servants to tell the guests, come, the banquet is ready. But they all began making excuses. One said, I just bought a field, and I must inspect it. Please excuse me. Another said, I just bought 5 pair of oxen, and I want to try them out. Please excuse me. Now, maybe you think that's a weird example, but how many of you, here's what I do. If I get a new toy, if I get something, it doesn't even make it home before I open it. You know what I'm saying? Just to be fully transparent with you, when I bought my first Echo Dot for my house, with Alexa, we didn't even make it home from Best Buy before that sucker was open, and I was trying to figure out how it worked. And I probably should have spent that night, it praying with my children and reading the Bible to them, but you know what I did? I spent 3 hours figuring out everything to do with this thing. So before you get on this guy, he's like, I got oxen. I got to check them out. I got to make sure they work right, okay? It's going to be great. And another said, I have a wife now. Praise Jesus. So I can't come because I'm busy. You know what I'm saying? And the servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And after the servant had done this, he reported, there is still room for more. So his master said, go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that the house will be full. For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet. Now listen, church, Christian, hopefully in this story, you're the servant, right? You're the one that Jesus is sending out. And he said, listen, you need to come to this party. Jesus is preparing it. I just want everybody to be there. And if you do this, you're going to hear the same excuses that this servant heard. Some of y'all have been inviting people to church or inviting people to a relationship with Jesus, and you heard the excuses, right? You heard, well, we just moved into town, and so we're kind of, we're getting settled in. I got to make sure that the floors are polished because that can't wait 2 hours on a Sunday. I got to get this right, and then we'll figure it out later. We'll get there eventually. You hear, I just got married, so we're going to go on the honeymoon, and then we'll figure it out. We'll get to church eventually. It's a priority in our lives, just not right now. And maybe we won't say it that way, but that's what I heard, right? Or you heard my personal favorite, which is, I don't know. And then they just kind of look at you like that was a real answer. Like, I don't know. You didn't say anything. You just said, I don't know. But here's the thing. We're going to hear the excuses of others when we invite them to the party. But Jesus doesn't want our excuses. Okay? He doesn't want us to worry about the excuses of other people. He simply wants us to let other people know that they're invited to the party, because there's 3 things happening, right? There's God's part. If you bring somebody to the party, you introduce them to Jesus, God's going to work in their hearts and their minds. That's what he does, is it not? And then there's the other person's part. Like, I can't make you accept the invitation to the party. That's up to you. You have to come, and that's on you. But what's on me is, am I obedient to what Jesus has asked me to do? Am I inviting people to the party? So there's God's part, there's other people's part, and there's my part. I'm only responsible for one. But I am responsible for my part, regardless of the excuses that I'm going to hear. You understand what I'm saying to you? And so we have to decide, is our priority actually people? And when we make our priority people, man, our priority is going to get tested real quick. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but Jesus draws people to himself, doesn't he? People want to be around Jesus. It's always been true. Jesus said, if I'm lifted up, I will draw all men to myself. And so you start inviting people to the party, and not everybody's going to accept the invitation, but a lot of people will. And when they do, things are going to change, and it's going to get uncomfortable. Listen, this guy went out, and he was told to invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame to the dinner party. You don't think when they showed up that the tenor of this dinner party changed a little bit? I think it probably did. And when we start inviting people who don't know Jesus with us to the party, things are going to change, because people are messy, and lost people are messier. And there's going to be people that show up that don't look or act or think or smell like you do. And their secret sins might not be so secret. Are you ready for that, church? I hope you are. Because it's going to get uncomfortable at times. But listen, Jesus didn't call me to be comfortable. He called me to be obedient. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to invite people to the party? Or am I just going to keep doing what I always did? And maybe you haven't been inviting people to the party because you don't feel like you're worthy to come to it in the first place, because you know what you did. And there's this voice in your head that says, you're not worthy, you can't come. Like, you might show up at the gate, but you ain't getting in. I mean, come on, be serious right now. And I need you to hear me when I say this to you. That is a lie directly from the pit of hell, and you don't need to believe that for one more second, because our Savior is a healer, and he wants to lift you higher than your failure and your brokenness and your pain. And he wants you to share that invitation with those around you as well. So what are we going to do, church? We're going to pull out a piece of paper, pull out your phone, pull out a card, whatever you need to do right now, and I need you to write down 2 or 3 names of people that are close to you. Okay, we'll branch out from there later, but let's start with people who will text you back when you text them, or who will answer the phone when they see your name. Pull out a piece of paper right now and write down 2 or 3 names of people close to you who need to know Jesus. And if you are someone who sends text messages out, text them before you leave this room and invite them to join you next week. Okay, and I understand that the party we're talking about and the party Jesus was talking about isn't a church service. We're talking about heaven. But some of us haven't invited people to church or to a relationship with Jesus in a long time anyway. So we're going to take a step of faith today, okay? I want you to text them. And if you don't like to text, if you're somebody who wants to make a phone call, do that. But do it before the sun goes down today. Because, church, it's time. It's time to move. It's time to share Jesus with the hurting so he can bring them healing. We're going to share Jesus with the hurting so he can bring them healing. Because it's not Elliot that heals people, or Tim, or Brandon, or the elders, or you. It's not. It's Jesus who brings healing to people's lives. Amen? But man, we've got to bring them to the party. We've got to invite them and let them know that Jesus wants them to come to the party. You want to see Jacksonville change? You don't think God wants to do that? You don't think he wants to work in Jacksonville? Man, I think he does. And here's the thing. When you start doing this, when you start inviting people to the party, it's going to take longer than you think it will, probably. I mean, maybe you'll see some instant results, but probably not. And if you do see instant results, we're going to celebrate that. We'll have a big party. It'll be fun, man. But I don't want you to get discouraged if you don't, because here's what happens in our lives. Oftentimes we overestimate what we can do in a week or a year, and then we get frustrated when we don't see it. But we underestimate what God can do in 5, don't we? What if 5 years from now, the person that you text this morning is leading a church in a different part of this city, seeing people come to know Jesus who you'll never meet in your life? How amazing would that be? You think it's too big for God to do? I don't think so. What if 5 years from now, Jacksonville is no longer known as a hub for sex trafficking, but is instead known as the hub for the gospel being sent to the ends of the earth. How awesome would that be? You think it's too big for God? You think it's not what he wants? Come on now, church. It's time. It's time. We're the bold city, right? That's what we're called. Jacksonville, bold city. Some of y'all got bold city on a t-shirt. Ain't never told nobody about Jesus. Come on now. It's time. It's time to step up and be the church that God's called us to be. He said, go out and invite people to the party. Make sure they know that they're welcome. And that's exactly what we're going to do, church. We're going to take Jesus. We're going to take this gospel. You know, the gospel that says we were broken because of our sin. I had no hope of getting to God on my own. And so what happened? God sent Jesus to give his life for me and for you so that we could be made right with God once more. So that we could be healed in the way that we really desperately needed it. And he's done that. And now he's asked us to go and invite people to the party. And maybe you're here this morning, you're like, I want some of that healing. Because I feel that brokenness. I know I'm disconnected from God, and I want that healing. How do I get that? We're going to sing a song here in just a second, and man, I'll be right here. I would love to talk to you about it. We'll have people in the back who would love to talk with you about it. You don't have to leave this room without experiencing this kind of healing from Jesus. Maybe you're here this morning, and you said, all right, enough is enough. I'm in. I'm ready. I want to see this city change, and I'm going to do something about it. Man, I hope that you'll come. Because when we're done with this next song, we're going to pray that God would give us the courage and the boldness to do what he's asked us to do. And can I just tell you, I hope that there's nobody sitting in the seat when we're done with the next song. Because I hope that what's going to happen is that we're going to say, enough is enough. It's time to take this city for Jesus. And it's time to stop talking about it and start doing it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to be quiet now, because now it's not the time for words. Now's the time for action, church. Let's do it. Let's pray.